we move on to motion number 1 in the name of Councillor Lyons.
Yeah, thank you, Ardvara. I think the last discussion was somewhat useful in terms of putting some context on this motion, which has been on the floor for a while now, and it seeks to call on us as elected representatives of Dublin City to live up to our legal obligations in terms of not trading with any company that is complicit in and profits from the breach of international laws, and Hewlett-Packard is such a company. But just to say that I do think it is galling, the kind of lack of information with regard to this issue, and that somehow this is separate from our role as elected representatives, because local authorities and other spheres of government bear a legal obligation to withhold recognition, cooperation and transaction with and/or assistance to parties in any illegal situation that breaches the preemptory norms, the fundamental principles of international law. In the case of Palestine, such illegal situations and violations include the crime of population transfer, apartheid, wars of aggression, genocide, forced labour, refugee refoulement and wars of aggression, territorial aggrandisement and torture, and any combination of acts such as that deny a people its right to self-determination. The duties and corresponding measures are self-executing, so that they do not need or require legislation, and certainly do not permit legal or other measures to interfere with their execution. The motion is calling on Dublin City Council not to renew its information and communications technology contracts with Hewlett-Packard, and I'll outline the reasons why Hewlett-Packard is complicit in the ongoing occupation, colonisation and apartheid system that the State of Israel enforces and imposes upon the people of Palestine. But just indeed to update our legal obligations, in June 2015 the UN Human Rights Council renewed its commitment to promote human rights and international solidarity by adopting Resolution 29/6, which inter alia requested all states, United Nations agencies and other relevant international organisations and non-governmental organisations to mainstream the right of peoples and individuals to international solidarity into their activities. In September 2015, the HRC received its advisory committee report on the role of local government in the promotion and protection of human rights, emphasising the human rights treaty obligations of local government. And as we shall see in a moment, we are failing in our obligations, as we are currently still continuing to trade with Hewlett-Packard. But it is important to state, and I know I have a full 5 minutes as the proposer of the motion, not the 2 that are up on the clock, that the State of Israel currently is in violation of over 30 UN resolutions. They are every day of the week really engaging in collective punishments. They are still enforcing a siege and blockade of Gaza, which the UN says by 2020 will make that particular part of the planet uninhabitable. It is still building the wall, annexation and annexing more and more of the land in the West Bank. It is still building illegal settlements, illegal under international law. And I think when Palestinians are told by some in the West that they need to be more peaceful in their protests and in their means of resistance, well, we've seen in the last couple of weeks what happens there, to adopt more Gandhian approaches to resisting the occupier, where 31 people have been murdered, men, women and children, journalists as well. People who are just trying to enforce their UN Resolution 194, eagerly recognised and mandated right of return, having been forcibly expelled in 1948. To facilitate the creation of Israel. So we are obliged, Lord Mayor, in the face of this, when there's a lack of, 2 more minutes, yes?
Oh, sorry, it's 3 minutes under standing orders,
3
not
minutes.
5.
Okay, I'll finish now in 1 minute. So, Lord Mayor, just to say that we have competence.
No, I actually put down 3 minutes.
What's up?
I had set the clock for 3 minutes.
Could you give me 1 more minute?
Giving you 1 more.
Go Rev Meal Mahgood. Just to say that Hewlett-Packard is aware, obviously, because it has technology which it provides for the checkpoints in the prison system. It assists the Israeli Navy in the blockade of Gaza, in the waters of the Gaza Strip. It issues the ID cards. All of these things are dependent upon the technology that Hewlett-Packard provides the Israeli state, and would not be able to enforce the apartheid system without such technology. So we have a legal obligation as a local government agency to disinvest and to cease trading with Hewlett-Packard. That's what the motion calls for. Our contract with them comes to an end in September of this year, and I am calling on behalf of the Peopleb4Profit group on Dublin City Council not to renew any contracts with Hewlett-Packard as part of our adoption of the broad goals of the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews for the Sinn Féin group.
Thanks, Chairman. I suppose to go back, people saying we don't have a function and it's all very symbolic, but I suppose Councillor Freehill, I think, granted Aung San Suu Kyi the freedom of the city, which is a symbolic act, and she'd no problem getting the robes out and grabbing headlines and standing up in front of the crowd and taking the applause at the time.
Sorry, one voice. And can speakers just ignore interrupters? Carry on with their contribution, please.
But the point is that it seems that when it suits certain people, they don't like symbolic acts and speaking up for people in other communities. But the Sinn Féin group supports this. The recent murder of Palestinians by Israel in Gaza is not a result of a clash. The murders were planned as systematic. They were carried out by an army that has nothing but contempt for Palestine and Palestinians. The Israeli Minister for War stated very recently that there are no innocent people living in the Gaza Strip. And having spent time there, a number of times I spent time in the Gaza Strip, I could only see terror imposed by Israel. The wall, this unbelievably big wall that is terrifying. You know you can't go 200 yards from it or you'll be shot. The drones, the blockades of the sea, trying to go out, make a living if you're a fisherman is impossible. The fighter jets, the military raids, the death squads, that's the terror that is being imposed on the Gaza Strip. That's the open-air prison that is the Gaza Strip. There is a lot of talk about a one-state solution or a two-state solution. And I think it's clear that Israel only sees one solution, and that is an Israel-controlled one-state solution where they only want broken Palestinians as part of them. But I can tell you that they will never break Palestine and they will never break the Palestinians. And I support, and the Sinn Féin group supports BDS, and we support John Lyons' motion. Thanks, Chair.
Independent group, Councillor McKinley.
Thank you very much.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ardvera. I'd like to support this motion in full. I think the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement is one that's gained traction around the world as a small act of solidarity and hitting Israel in the pocket. We only see in our own country that the Trinity College Students' Union recently adopted a BDS position, and it's good to see that the BDS movement is growing in this country. What happened last week was nothing short of disgraceful. It was a war crime. It was an atrocity. It was unacceptable. It was inhumane. And arresting Ahed Tamimi, a child who did nothing but protest, is nothing short of criminal as well. And for Israel to act with such impunity, what the IDF Twitter feed said after the protest, that they knew where every bullet landed. Those bullets killed people. So they basically admitted that they knew what they were doing. They knew they were killing people, which is so grave and inhumane. And for the United States to then back that through the UN by opposing any resolutions against it is nothing short of a disgrace. So something I'd like to ask for you, Lord Mayor, is to write to the US Embassy here in Dublin as well, outlining our opposition to their position that they took in the UN, because I think we need to take this further, you know. And just on the substantive motion, I do think we need to support it. And as Councillor Lyons said, if the contract isn't renewed in September, I think that would be a positive, a small positive, hitting a rogue nation which has carried out acts of international piracy on the high seas, as in the case with the Freedom Flotilla, and a state that just continues to act with impunity and with disregard for international law. I think that would be a very good, important, small step that we can make as a City Council. Thank you very much, Ardvera.
Fianna Fáil group.
Ardvera, Gormagat, I'll be very, very brief in what I have to say. Ardvera, I would just I'll preface this by saying I'm all in favour of voting for this motion. I think sanctions work, and I think these are more of a symbol than absolutely anything. My question is, maybe we can get the law agent to come in on this. Can the local authority, as a local authority operating within the EU under EU procurement law, actually affect such a motion? Or will it be illegal? Because obviously we can't be passing something that's going to be illegal. So maybe if the law agent can come in, because obviously if the contract is up, we have to go out for procurement on that contract, and tenders have to come in, and preferred bidders and things like that. So my thoughts is that we can't actually exclude somebody, and it would be illegal to do so under EU procurement law, and maybe the law agent can give us advice on that. Gormalgut.
Well, I will be bringing the management in before we conclude. The Fine Gael group.
Yeah, Gormalgut Arver. I'm here to represent the Fine Gael group on my own. Join me. Ardvera, happy to support the debate of the motion, Ardvera, because it is in order. We had a debate on the flag previously, Palestine. Oh, my colleague has returned. We debated the flag, the erection of the flag previously, and I supported two flags to go up together because I am a supporter of the two-state solution for that region. But, you know, I'm just missing a huge part of a justification here. We're jumping from, this is a political motion, and I see no justification, facts, figures, details, numbers, anything to justify, you know, striking at an employer in this country of 2,000 people plus. A company that has a long track record right back to the foundation of the computer industry in terms of computing power and its history. You know, a big employer, you know, hundreds of people employed in HPE in Galway, for example. This is, you know, we can't just be doing this. We can't just be pulling the trigger on motions like this with absolutely no justification. And the ironic thing, Ardvera, is over there on the left side of this chamber, there is at least one piece of HP technology in active use here tonight. So I just cannot understand. There's an element, there's a hypocrisy to that, I think. We can't, on the one hand, be calling for a boycott and then be using the technology here while we're calling for it. So on that basis alone, I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you. And I didn't name anybody, Lord Mayor.
Labour group. Is there a speaker?
Support the motion. I won't take up any more time, but to say that.
Okay. Just to move it on, would Peopleb4Profit forgo their time, seeing as you did propose the motion? Is that okay?
I'd like to come in if that's okay, because I was a bit passionate earlier on, but just what I wanted to say in relation to this motion is that from my own personal experience, I was in the West Bank last summer volunteering in a cultural centre there with women and children, and stayed in the Aida refugee camp, which is completely surrounded and overlooked by 5 towers on the apartheid wall. And I witnessed, in the 2 weeks that I was there, I witnessed children being kidnapped, being tear gassed. We had live ammunition shot over our heads. The building that I was staying in was raided by Israeli soldiers one night. As I travelled around the region, I witnessed the ongoing humiliation and intimidation of the Palestinian people. And time again, when there are particular flare-ups, when the Israelis choose to be particularly obnoxious in their treatment of the Palestinian people, the international community looks on, and there's outcries and there's protests and there's marches, and we all call on our governments to say something, to intervene and to do something, and very rarely any of them do. And this is a real opportunity for us here tonight to do something that is meaningful and real, and that is going to make a substantive and real change and difference to the ongoing struggle of the Palestinian people, because of, as a few other people have mentioned, it was the Dunn Stores workers that took a stand, and that got the ball rolling in apartheid South Africa. And we have a really historic opportunity here in Dublin City Council, the largest local authority in the state, to do something real and meaningful for the Palestinian people.
Thank you. Green Party.
There's a long history of attempted peace negotiations in this region, and all you have to do is look at how they have failed. We had the Oslo Accords, which required Israeli withdrawal from the occupied West Bank, which never happened. In '98, was followed by the Wye River Memorandum, which again called Israel agreed to make further withdrawals from the settlements and from the West Bank, which never happened. Settlement building increased, settlement building goes on, land appropriation, land theft, land grabs continue to this day, despite these previous commitments. In Camp David in 2000, we had a further attempt at peace, and again you had this Bantuization of the West Bank and this carving up of the West Bank. There has been continued failure after failure, partly because it suits Israel for the peace talks not to work. Their fallback position of business as usual, of expanding settlements, works for them, and they don't have to worry about these kind of things. So I think it's naive of our current Minister for Foreign Affairs, who says he believes that Benjamin Netanyahu wants to talk and wants to establish peace. I don't think that's true. His record shows it's not true. And if our Foreign Affairs Minister really believes that, that's very naive. The reality is, when many people talk about where is the Palestinian Mandela, the real question is, where is the Israeli FW de Klerk? Where is the Israelis looking to actually resolve this situation? Because I also have been to Israel and Palestine. I certainly haven't met very many of them. The only thing that will push action in this area is outside pressure. The only thing that will push the parties back to the negotiating table is outside pressure. And for that reason, I fully support this motion. Thank you.
Motion before it's
Okay, if we don't take the motion at 9:30, the debate will continue into the next meeting. So I'm asking that we bring in the management for the clarification asked for, or the response to question asked for, and then we take the motion. Is that agreed? Agreed.
Mayor,
okay.
we started this late. It was nearly 9:10, so can we go a few minutes over?
Well, we can't. My hands are tied by standing orders. I can't change that. There's a procedure for extending time, and we've gone past the time to do that.
Look, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on the terms of the motion generally. However, I feel I have to remind the members that legal responsibility for all procurement by the City Council rests with me as Chief Executive and not with the elected members. In exercising this responsibility, I'm obliged to comply with statutory national and EU procurement frameworks. While I am conscious that there are limited grounds for exclusion, there's also a requirement to meet procurement obligations, including equal treatment of all parties and ensuring that we don't deliberately restrict the market. In view of this, I have to advise the meeting that if the motion is passed, I do not propose to implement a procurement boycott of any entity based on the content of the motion, as to do so would, in my opinion, and based on the legal advice I've received, be in breach of both national and EU procurement frameworks.
Lord Mayor, just to respond to that, EU Directive 2014-24 EU and the World Trade Organization's government procurement agreement allow for such a motion to be passed and implemented.
Okay, before we put the motion, I just want to say very briefly, it was suggested somehow earlier on that I was not revealing that I'm travelling to Palestine tomorrow. I issued a statement on that this afternoon. And also, for the benefit of Councillor Costello, I accepted that invitation many weeks ago. And to suggest that I somehow am using the slaughter of Palestinians to grab headlines is absolutely reprehensible, and I totally reject it. And I'm actually more determined to go after what has happened. But the idea that I would be using this as a headline grabbing is absolutely disgraceful. Can we put the motion, please?
motion. The motion.
I circulated an amendment as well, Lord Mayor. There's an amendment as well, Lord Mayor.
Sorry, just so we're all clear that Standing Order number 8 says that this council shall rise not later than 9:30 p.m. If people had wanted to extend the motion, they had to do it before 9 o'clock. Extend the meeting. Yeah, so that's... It's just... Oh, wait.
Can we agree to take the motion? We were very little over time.
The amended motion, Lord Mayor.
Okay, can we suspend standing orders to take the motion?
Yes.
Is that agreed?
Yes. Ready to vote? Yeah.
We'll take the vote, please.
Amendment, Lord Mayor, if that can be read out.
Okay. The amendment as read, the amendment text is to discontinue all business contracts it has with Hewlett-Packard, both HP Inc., PCs and printers, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprises for business and government services, as well as the HP spin-off DXC Technologies, as HP and DXC provide and operate much of the technology infrastructure that Israel uses to maintain its system of apartheid and settler colonization over the Palestinian people. Has everybody voted?
No, I'm not getting a yellow light here.
Okay.
Yeah, Nisha, you're still not voting.
He's trying to. So the vote is. Well, the vote is carried 30 to 8 with 2 abstentions.